about governance, and we are recording this. So we do events about governance and system innovation. So how do you work the complexity of organizing specifically countries, cities, nations, groups of nations, et cetera, et cetera. And we try to really always focus on the aspiration, the big thinking that goes out there, specifically with system innovation, but also the realness of reality. And that, of course, is always the case with government work and governance. And today we are with a first in the series about a collective intelligence in democratic governance. So what do we mean by that? So that is the power and the intelligence of the people, because more and more it's not about that one person on top knowing everything and deciding how it goes, because we did that 1,000 years ago. Now with technology, with smart ways of working, we can do it together. We can literally make sure that the right street there is, or the street in the right way is being built with the right playgrounds and trees and whatever else. That's this as an example. And this series, today's the first one in the series. So today we have a special guest. But before I say that, let me just also say that the hub team is not just me, Martin Liz Fitzgerald, as you can see, say my name. We have Isaac from Australia, who will also be helping out on Zoom, and Myro. We have Mario from Sweden also in the team. Florian, who is in the innovation department for the Austrian government, had to do important work today, so he can't make it. Alba as well, she's in the team, but thank God Zahed is here as well. Zahed, wave your hand for the people to see or shout something. Anyway, we're the team. We organize all these events. You can follow us on LinkedIn, of course, on the platform and everything there. Let's see, what else do I want to say before we start off? So today, important, if you're on the phone, please find a computer or just use the chat when you are in your working team, because today is not a listening session, it's a doing session, because we're going to experience something that is what we're talking about, instead of just us telling you how it is or what it could be. So I hope you're ready for that. Today's session will be about 3 words: participatory narrative inquiry. It took me a while to be able to say this, but maybe after this session you will be able to say it, or just say P&I, which is the short version. And leading the workshop today, and our special guest, is Cynthia Kurtz. And yeah, I'd like to call her the godmother of this method, because for over 20 years she's been working hard to make this, to figure out what this is, how it is, and implement it everywhere, basically, and do many projects. And everything she does is available. So it is all open source. All the knowledge here today, not only this is free, but everything, the books, everything you can find on her website. You can get the link later. So she'll be hosting. So when I'm done, I'll pass her on the word, because she's going to run the workshop. We're going to use Myro. The link is in the chat, so please open that, because you're going to work in there, as said. And also, so we're not going to start and explain in detail why this is, how this is. We're going to jump in. So literally, you're going to be thrown into the pool, and you're going to float. Don't worry about that, and we'll help you with that. It's an hour and a half, and so in the end, we'll close off. And let's just start with a quick warm-up exercise to get you warmed up in Myro. And that is, in our warm-up exercise, please put a dot where you are in the world currently, and use the color for how you're feeling. If you're high energy, low energy, high mood, low mood. So we get a sense on how everybody is. And of course, I am red because, no, I'm green. And I'm in Amsterdam. Let me put that there. Oh, that's what I do. Should have locked it. But let's see where everybody's. Let's see. Thank you, Zahed, because I always wondered in detail where you were, but now I see it. Very good. And if you've already done this, on the right, you can also fill in what your understanding is of P&I. Is it low? Is it high? Have you do this all day? If you never heard about it and you're curious, please put it in there. I'm just somewhere in the middle here. Now look at that. The world is slowly filling up. I'm going back to the left and I see that we got Australia. Hi, Isaac. We got, I think, yeah, we got people on the East Coast. We got people in Canada. Yeah, Europe is filling up. I see Sweden. Oh, and we have India. Oh, we're going around the world, but where is Asia? We always miss Asia. We have to figure that out, Roma. By the way, Roma is probably also in the call or still is. She is with the core team of SI. So if you have any questions about system innovation networks, she can also help you with that and use the chat. Rick says Miro is not working, no map. Well, you can always, Rick, use the chat to say what you need to say or not. Just enjoy and sit back. It's all good. And I think I used up my 5 minutes, didn't I, Isaac? And I think if I look at most people here, we are all young learners. I had an experienced young dog, or experienced puppy is the term I got for myself of the other day. Maybe we are all that. Very good. Well, I think because we should keep going, we have a good sense where everybody is. The board is getting moved around a lot, but we're getting warmed up, which is the point. Oh, and your Miro is playing up. Let's figure that out while we start. With this, I'm going to have or hand over the word to Cynthia, who will be doing the workshop part. So with that, thank you, everybody. And Cynthia, take it away.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Let's all go over to if you follow the arrow to your right after the map, there's a few diagrams there that are actually there for me, so I can remember what to say. So I want to show you first the thing on the left, the Venn diagram. So the thing that I'm trying to tell you about today is called participatory narrative inquiry. And yes, for the first 10 years or so, I could not say the word participatory quickly. Anyway, this is a marriage of three different things. People coming together, people telling stories, and people figuring things out. And there are three different connections that are not P&I. One is called narrative inquiry. That's an academic field where researchers go out and gather stories from people and then analyze them and write papers and books and things. And the people who told the stories don't generally ever see their stories again. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a thing. But that's not what P&I is. There's another grouping, which is participatory inquiry, and that's a field called action research, in which groups of people come together to do things. And it's a really cool, exciting thing. And in fact, I consider P&I to be a form of that uses stories. But in general, in action research or participatory action research, there isn't a whole lot of talk about stories. So primarily, P&I is a mixture of narrative inquiry and action research. There's a third grouping, which is participatory narrative without inquiry. And that's basically just people sharing stories every day without like any purpose to it. But P&I definitely has a purpose. People are sharing, I call it sharing stories for a reason. And people do it to figure things out, to get along better with each other, to resolve problems, things like that. So that's what it is. And the second diagram is how it works. And this inner circle here is the basic essential phases of it. And these go back like tens of thousands of years. This is just what people normally do, except we kind of pay more attention to it and systematize it a bit. So we always start by collecting some stories, and that could go from an hour in a room with three people to 10,000 people over 10 years. The projects vary enormously. In fact, we're going to do a tiny P&I project right now, as soon as I stop talking. Then the second phase is sense making, and that is where people work with the stories together, compare them, contrast them, build larger stories out of them. This is something we all do every day, but again, it's just paying more attention to it. And then we have the return phase where the stories go back into the community, and that is also natural and something that always happens. And then there's three optional phases, which I'm not going to mention right now because we don't have time for it and it's not important. And those happen on the big projects. Then we have this little graph to the right here that is things that P&I is used for. Now, I just want you to just look at that for a second and I don't want to waste time talking about it, because at the end, when we're finished with our activities, I'm going to show that to you again and ask you people to pick one, and then I'll tell you about a project in that area. And I have a couple of projects picked out that I sort of remember. I mean, I'm looking back over 25 years here, so some of them are a bit foggy, but I tried to pick the ones I remember the best. So that is my very quick introduction. And now we're ready to go into our first activity. Does anybody want to stop me? Okay. The first activity, that we have this array of rooms here. And these are corresponding to, we're going to have Zoom breakout rooms. So what we're going to do is the rooms are going to be just with 3 people. And as you can see, if you look at the first one here, you can see that we have some stories here. And these are stories that we collected before today's session from a bunch of different people. And these are all stories about ideas. Ideas for managing community contributions. That was the question. So what you're going to do is in your group of 3 people, each person start at a different random place in the collection of stories. Don't everybody start with the first one. And just read until you find a story that resonates with you, with your own experience, that says, where you read it and you say, yeah, I recognize that. That's something like that happened to me, or I know about something like that. So what you do then is you take the name of that story and you take a sticky note and you put it in this, ooh, that's giant. Wow. You put the sticky note in this place where it says selected story names, and Isaac's doing it. And his isn't giant. I don't know why that happened. Uh, and you just type the name of it there. That's to say that you picked that story. And then after you did that, think of a story that you want to tell. And so everybody this is only 3 people in these small groups. So you're going to each tell the story that you thought of, the story that you picked, and the story that you thought of. So you're going to have a pair of stories. Exactly. And then you give that story a name and stick it there. And that's the first activity, and that should take 20 minutes. So I think we're ready to go into that. Now, can somebody create the rooms, and just distribute yourself whatever into any room you want. There should be 3 people maximum per room.
Stand by. Rooms are coming.
Welcome back, everybody. I saw some great work. And Cynthia, please take it away, of course, while everybody's coming back.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much people were able to do. But let's find out what happened in some of the groups. Now we have, how many groups do we have? How many rooms did we have?
We had active. We had
4.
4 rooms. Yeah.
Okay. So then we'll have time to go through them all. Okay. So why don't we have somebody from group 1 tell us what happened in their group? Actually, that's the group I was in. So somebody other than me, just for a few minutes, tell us what happened.
From room 2, perhaps?
Room 1?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to. I did also just join for the session, so I had to kind of a little bit reverse engineer what we had previously done. But is it actually reading or summarizing the stories, or more just like the process, or just a few things that came from the conversation?
Whatever you got out of it.
Okay. I think one thing I found which was interesting is that we seemed to, from what I understood, we had some original stories that were posted, but then we had other people shared their interpretations or their personal experiences which related to that, and we were actually talking about those secondary stories. And I think one thing I enjoyed about the stories is that they were inherently kind of personal. and that made it more real in a way. So given that obviously we didn't have a lot of time, it still felt personal, and yeah, even for someone joining halfway through, it was something I could relate to very quickly.
Okay. Okay, does someone from the next group want to sort of say what they got out of it, or what something they noticed, or something that surprised them?
Maybe I can start, but I admit I wasn't able to, represent everything. I'm not going to be able to represent everything we said, so I really invite the others to complement me. So my first, the first thing that came to my mind was that while we were able to identify some patterns in the past, in the present, especially as attention between, trying to enlarge the area in which, different knowledge perspectives could come together. I think somebody said something that, sorry, I liked it so much, that sometimes scientists are like tourists, with reference to this is going to be my quotation at some presentation, because I think it was fantastic. But not in a derogatory way. Anyway, whoever knows the story can understand this better. So as much as we could see the pattern, at least highlighting a tension between enlarging the space of conversation somehow and bringing different knowledge together, and the problem of needing structure and time actually to make sense of then these different perspectives. I'm not sure we were able to identify patterns in the future, because the question about needing more time and potentially resources to do all this was partly already in present and past, but then we also were kind of discussing at the end the question of trying to create new collective and being aware of the risk of not repeating the old patterns of then having only one way of doing things, and reinforcing an idea of how the way should be done in a community, and that's the best community, and everything else disappears somehow or loses its dignity. So in this sense, for the future, I think there is not much pattern, and I would say that this is probably normal as the future is that very unstable area. But yeah, so I invite anybody else, because we had great conversation inside, to complement.
Just very quickly, one pattern that we did notice is across stories, is inviting different perspectives, multiple perspectives. So diverse perspectives, but one thing that we notice is also a difference in some of the stories is that sometimes those diverse perspectives are in the same room, so there might be disagreement, but sometimes they may not even be in the room. So just like indigenous knowledge, local knowledge versus the tourist perspective, they're not even on the same, that there's a different set of values, different systems that may not even intersect. So I think that raises the question maybe for future, who's in the room, who's actually absent. So actually conflict is a proof of the fact that diverse perspectives are in the room, but if there's no conflict, it actually makes us ask different questions, who's not even there. And I think there were a lot of different other, like focusing too much on one community, power dynamics, belonging. So a lot of other wonderful ideas that are in the post-it notes, but we want to leave other groups as well to share. So thank you.
I think that's really valuable. I think the idea of steel manning an opposing argument starts to pull you into that, and you may recognize, or it may occur to you that there are possible perspectives outside the room that you should be aware of. Obviously, you may not have the tribal knowledge that the indigenous folk did. That I thought that was a super interesting story and really felt like what I run into inside of large companies, but yeah, I think that it encourages you to flip a problem, basically, and there's always something to be learned in flipping a problem.
Okay. Do we have time for more? I don't know how our time.
Well, I would like to add something small that I always feel caught in a dilemma in sessions like this, where you as a facilitator has designed this canvas that expect input. So the conversation is very interesting, and but because of that, we don't manage to fill it in most of the time. I'm looking at my neighbors at the moment. So we ended up doing both. So I hope, that will
both what and what?
give you the thanks for the hard work you did for this canvas. Thank you very much.
Well, this was very rushed. Normally, when we do this kind of thing, this is over 4 or 6 hours. So this was just a little tiny taste, and we had to shrink it down a lot. And we didn't, if you didn't get to everything, that's totally normal. But you can imagine the kind of experience that you just had, but longer and more people and over more periods of time. Sometimes we'll have things that happen for 2 hours every week, and a kind of a longer session like that, where you have more time to think through all the different meanings in the different stories. And you often have more stories than this, maybe on the order of 100 or something like that. So that gives you a tiny bit of an idea of what this technique is about, is that you're sharing stories with each other, and you're talking about the patterns that you see among the stories, and you're kind of moving the stories around and making sense of them together as a body, and fueling your discussion with that. So I think we should move on. Yeah. Okay. To kind of the last section here, where yes, these are some different areas in which this technique is used, this method, and I wondered if someone might want to just shout one of them out as something that you'd like to hear, and I can tell you about a project that happened in that area.
Innovation.
Okay, yeah, that seems obvious, huh? Let me see. I have them written down here. Okay, so the one I have, and this is not the best projects, it's just the ones I remember best, because I'm looking back over 25 years of projects, and so some of them are a little foggy. So this was a project, some of the work I've done that was foundational in building this method was for agencies of governments that were forward-looking. So trying to plan for the future and deal with upcoming threats and opportunities. So this project was for a defense agency in a government, and the project was a training exercise, and we had people take historical accounts of actual conflicts and then come up with alternative histories about other ways these conflicts could have ended. And that was kind of the story collection. It was an imagination exercise where we asked people to tell stories about other ways they could envision things coming out. And then we brought those things together with a collection of case studies about real historical conflicts, about what really did happen. And then people went through a sense-making exercise where they talked about what do these real stories about the past and these made-up stories about the past that we made up tell us about what we should be thinking about for the future. And I would call it a kind of chronological benchmarking, right? So when you are doing, I think it's called benchmarking, isn't it? I'm not getting that word wrong, am I? The thing you do where you're comparing your experience to others, or you're comparing your group to others, or whatever. But this was comparing through time and through fiction and nonfiction. And so the people came out of this exercise with kind of expanded way of thinking about conflict. And specifically, it was about asymmetric conflicts, and how we could think about them in a more innovative way. So that's an example of a project. Do we have time for one more? I think we do.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does somebody call out another one?
Evaluation. I would be interested in that.
Okay, so evaluation. Let me see where I have. Yes, this is one of my favorite projects, actually. This was a project I did for an international development agency. And this was an evaluation of a project to help poor farmers in a country. And the project that we were evaluating helped farmers with finding new ways to bring their products to market. And that project, it started out, we spent a week training up a local team of story gatherers, and we taught them how to listen to stories and all of this. And then they went out into the different villages in a very small rural area, and they interviewed all these farmers and people who moved farm produce around to markets. And they collected 500 stories about what it was like, and partly it was about what are the difficulties that you faced, but it was also partly about what impact that this development project had been. And what they had done in the project was set up new farmers markets in different villages and things, and gave the farmers new options. And so then after we did that, we got all the stories back and we asked questions about the stories. I helped with some data number crunching to help them find patterns. And then they set up a two-tiered sense-making system. One was for the aid workers, and they talked to them about all the patterns that we found and the stories and everything, and did they did a long sense-making. I think it was like a full day sense-making thing with them. And then part of what they did was they picked out some patterns that they wanted to hear from the farmers about. And then local people, and there was a lot of translation going on between different languages in the middle of this. But the local people then went and had meetings with the farmers, some of the farmers who told the stories. Now, these people, none of them could read or write. And so this was all an oral sense making, completely oral. And so the patterns that we had found, they were just described to the people, and then the people reacted and they had a discussion about it. And it was very surprising to the aid workers that they said certain things to the farmers, like, well, we discovered from the stories that you have this issue and that we hadn't known about this issue. And the farmers were like, well, of course we have this issue. Why didn't you ever ask us that before? And they had thought deeply about it. And so they had this really lively discussion in which a lot of new ideas came out for ways to make things better. And so then the results of that, and that meeting was recorded and translated, and then the aid workers then did another set of sense making on what the farmers had said about the stories. So that was a project that I was really happy with, because there was a lot of sense making sort of moving all around that network. So anyway, that was one of my favorite projects. That kind of, to me, shows how this really works, is that you get a lot of different people talking about issues that matter to all of them, and they overcame barriers of people not understanding each other. Okay. Do we have time for one more, or do we not? I don't think. Oh, we have 5 minutes. Oh, I was going to, I have a thing here on the pitfalls.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So the most common pitfalls I've seen in people doing this, and I've coached a lot of people doing this work, and I separated it into 4 things. One is that sometimes people want to do this work, but they don't really want it to be participatory. They don't want to give over control to the people who are telling the stories and doing the sense making. And so when people are holding back from that, you don't get enough trust. The stories come out kind of defensive, or I call them camouflage stories. And you think you're getting an outcome, but in fact, you're just sort of skimming the surface of the whatever you're trying to talk about. And so you do have to kind of keep the P part in it, that keep the participation in it. Another thing that can happen is people go through the motions. So they learn how to do it, and they do everything exactly according to what you're supposed to do, but they're not really allowing themselves to get deeply into the meaning of it and negotiating the meaning. And so they end up having finished the project, but not feeling that they really got to the heart of anything. And then often people, when they do that, they say, well, this doesn't really work. But you get out of it what you put into it. Then two other pitfalls are what I call looking for your keys under the light, which this one happens a lot, probably the most of any of these, is that people say, well, maybe we could do that, but this seems easier, so let's just do this thing. And then they don't get very good results, and then they say, well, this didn't work very well. And that, and usually the easy thing is not necessarily the way that's going to work. And then the other is kind of the opposite of that. I call it biting off more than you can chew, which is that people say, oh, wow, we're going to do this. And they just throw everything in. They just say, how about one of these and one of these and one of these? And they try to do too much, and it kind of collapses on them. And then they say, well, I guess this doesn't work. And the solution for all of these things, and I always tell this to people, is start small. Just start with a few people in a room, trying out a few ideas. And like we just did, okay, that was a tiny little taste of it. You can start doing this in one conversation. You're just asking people, so did this ever happen to you? Or is there a time when you did this? Or a time when you felt this way? And you're just asking people about their experiences and building on that. And then as you get going, it gets easier and easier to keep becoming more ambitious with what you're doing. So whenever people want to start a big project, I say, start a small project first, then you'll get going. And I think we have, 2 minutes? So
we do, yeah.
Yeah, and at the bottom here is just, these are some things you can look at that I have. There are 4 books in the Working with Stories series. They're all free to read online. The first book there is in the fourth edition now. The first edition was in 2008, so I've been working on this for a while. So anyone can go and look at those. I have that's my website there where I do consulting. And also I have some new courses that are starting up soon, if anyone's interested in more of it. So that's it.
And I can attest to certainly the scale, but value of the content. I dived into it to help develop this workshop. So yeah, I really appreciate everything that's out there, Cynthia. There's a lot that you've put up for free. It's wonderful. I'll quickly jump to right down here. Just very quickly, I'll throw back to Martin.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia, for an awesome deep dive, experiential deep dive. And I feel the experience, and wow, impressive, the depth to quickly get to know something as important as this. So, and thank you, Isaac, for also helping develop this. So, people, just to close off, Governance Hub, here you see a link for the SI network. Please click on it, and we can put it in the chat as well. YouTube, soon we'll publish what we have recorded on YouTube, and also we are active on LinkedIn, which you can see there. And we have a position paper that we wrote about the whole subject. So we can share this as well. Let me do that myself. Oh, that don't work. No, my link is not right. So we can fix that.
Downloadable at the top of the Miro board as well.
We'll add that later, or we'll post that later. So what I'd like you to do, go back to the Miro and give us some feedback, because we would love to know what you thought about it. So answer the question with your dots. The format of this session, was it effective? Strongly disagree to strongly agree, pick your thing. And also about the format, because this was an active format. So very important for us to know what you think, because as you heard, we're going to do a series. We're already working on the next one, and we'd like to see what you thought about this, because this is for us at first to go this active and this deep. And also, if you have any ideas on how we might improve things. For instance, I already put in that it might be a good idea that next time we will put you in the rooms ourselves instead of that you have to walk virtually yourself. Those kind of things are always helpful. Thank you for all those people who are still here. We're now overtime officially. We're still here. So if you have a question like Rick has, that's okay. Did I say everything? I hope I did. And feel free, keep following us, and we'll be back probably within a month. So keep an eye on the channels. And Rick, go ahead, because now we're closed, or we opened the door,
We have to go.
but we can chat now like we're in the room, like standing and stuff.
Yes, and I love the work, and it reminds me of, I'm sure you know Dave Snowden's work and his framework, and I already did an AI search on comparing the two and contrasting them, which we don't have to discuss here because it'll take too long. But actually, it's a very practical one. Will you share all the links and the slides and send it out to the participants?
Actually, I worked with Dave Snowden for 8 years, so we did this together.
Oh, okay.
But we disagreed on everything, so we ended up going our separate ways.
Yeah, Cynthia, I can understand why you might do that. So, but anyway, we can have a conversation some other time about that one.
Did it lead to better understanding of the problem?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Our conflicts were very productive. Yes. Yes.
Well, that brings up a whole point of how to have healthy disagreements and creating the space for that occurring. So I think we're very poor at that. So how can you create the context so that you can actually have the safety and trust where you can still stay in the same room?
Yeah.
There's actually a large body of academic work on what's called constructive conflict. That's worth looking at. There's a lot of stuff to read on that. Yeah.
I was going to ask, is it your standard practice to start with those seed stories in the way that we did? The first pass of, putting out some stories for people to sort of collect and build on?
Well, what we did was what I call a pairing exercise, which is what we use when generally we start by gathering stories, either interviewing people or we have group sessions or we have surveys over the internet. So we usually start with gathering stories somehow. And then when the people in the sense making, which is what we were doing, aren't the people who told the original stories, we do that pairing exercise to kind of help people inhabit the stories and understand them better by connecting them to their own experiences. It stops people from seeing them as something other people said that doesn't matter to me. That's the purpose of that. Yeah.
I was curious if it was a response to blank page inertia that happens where, it's always easier to take something and build on it, have a reaction to something than it is to start with a blank page.
It's actually pretty important to give people a blank page in the beginning, because you want them to be able to say anything they need to say. It's really important in participatory work to not hem people in. We try to work hard on designing questions that invite people to say whatever's important to them, and then that gets fed in, but then later on more people come in but generally to start out, we want things to be very open and free.
I usually start with rapport building and then working into personal relevance. And usually the stories come out of the personal relevance. So
in the preparation for the workshop, I got a lot of pushback on the forum we shared. Like, what do you mean? And because people were afraid to do it wrong. And so they really nitpicked on the question and the words. And my wife, for instance, like, I don't know what you mean. I'm like, just do anything, The Korean community ones were hers. But it was interesting to feel that inertia, indeed. And how hard, and indeed, I think even my report didn't work initially. But I think that's for me anyway, that was so good to experience in this process. That initial stage is so important. The words are important. The state is important, and in short, also just to get the room to do it right.
And we always have a testing phase in the beginning of a project where you try out the things you want to do, and I always try to get people to do that. You don't just pick a question or an approach and just say, here's what we're doing. You go out and try it with some people, because you're always going to learn things that you misunderstood about what you were trying to do.
Before we go on, Isaac, I know you're in Australia and you're over your bedtime, and feel free to log off, right?
Thank you. I may have to make you the host, but
yeah, feel free. I don't know what to do with the recorder, and I'll figure it out. It's like, what is it, 2 o'clock? 1 o'clock?
It's 20 to 2 in the morning. Yeah.
Good morning. Cheers. Okay. Rick, do you still have it up, or do you have another one?
No, I just want to suggest a couple of tweaks to your format, and I'm sure you considered them. But one is to have like a fast speed networking at the beginning, because it always takes a few minutes to get people on board. So the people who come on time, you can break into dyads or triads, and they can just schmooze for 3 minutes. Why the hell did you show up? What's your story, sort of thing, just to help with networking. So you're using that cushion. But also at the end, some groups I belong to, where you actually allow a half-hour unstructured time where people can. It's sort of like an unconference format, because it's all making connections, and just some tweaks. And I look forward to your next event.
Good.
Thank you.
It might have something to do with all the New Amsterdam, but it's still in pre-production.
Thank you all. Have a
Yep.
beautiful day and see you next month.
Thanks much.
Bye bye.
Thanks for being
Bye-bye.
here. Oh, maybe some Rotterdam too. Yeah.
No. The Hague.
Oh, the heck. Okay.
Hey, bye.